and welcome to Planning and Development Public Meeting for Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. The public meeting tonight is for 16 Kemp Road. Live streaming. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are live streamed by the Town of Grimsby. Individuals and media may be audibly and or visually recorded during this meeting. As a reminder, all electronic devices are to be in silent mode during our committee meeting. Only those people who have registered as a delegation have been provided to the Zoom link. If you have not registered but would like to provide comments, you can do so by emailing planning@grimsby.ca. Please address your comments and questions through myself, the mayor. Do any members of the committee have a pecuniary interest with respect to the application being heard? Seeing none. Planning Act Section 3414.5. Number one, if a person or public body does not make an oral submission at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Grimsby in respect to the proposed zoning amendment and official plan amendment before the approval authority gives or refuses to give approval to the zoning official plan amendments, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Town of Grimsby to the local planning appeal tribunal. Number two, if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Grimsby in respect of the zoning official plan amendment before the approval authority gives or refuses to give approval to the applications, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal. In the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. All right. The information report is what we're going to start with. Report PA 21-22, Public Information Report, 16 Kemp. Jessica, welcome. Hi, Jessica. How are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my screen now? Nancy, can you see my screen now? Hello?
Yes, it's
Yes,
good.
yes, we can see your screen.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah, thank you. So good evening, Mayor, members of council, and the committee members. My name is Jessica He. I am a planner with the Town of Grimsby. We are gathered here tonight for a public meeting for development application at 16 Kemp Road West. This meeting is being held to satisfy the requirements of the Planning Act. The applicant has applied for a zoning bylaw amendment. This will be discussed in more detail tonight. There are three parts in tonight's meeting agenda. First is the Planning Department presentation. Staff's presentation is intended to highlight the details of the application and any relevant policy frameworks that apply to the proposed development. An information report with all the background information was prepared by staff for tonight's meeting and is part of the agenda. Second is the applicant presentation. This presentation led by the applicant will describe the proposed development in detail and show how it achieves the town's vision. At the end is comments and the discussions. The purpose of tonight's meeting. As previously mentioned, tonight's meeting is held under the Planning Act and represents the community engagement component of the application. Other application types, such as official plan amendments under the Planning Act, require the same statutory public meeting. The planning process at the Town of Grimsby is a 6-step process. Tonight's meeting is step number 4, statutory public meeting. After the public meeting, staff will continue to review the application and work with the applicant to address comments from the community and all agencies. After the applicant has addressed all the comments to the satisfaction of town staff, staff will prepare a final recommendation report and the council will make a decision on the application. Rights of the applicant. Property owners in Ontario have authority under the Planning Act to submit applications to amend OPs and ZB to facilitate development proposals, and the town is required to accept and process these applications. How can amendments to plans occur? The planning policy framework in Ontario is top-down, so this means that OPs and ZB can be amended with appropriate justification, and the justification must show how the proposed development is consistent with and conforms with provincial, regional, and local land use planning framework. How can I get involved? Tonight's meeting is one of many ways to get involved in the planning process. You can also write a letter or email to planning staff. The lead planner assigned to the application is always available via email, so please send your feedback to planning@greensby.ca. Community members also have the option to engage with their local member of council. Contact details for ward councillors can be found on the town's website. Now, I will briefly introduce the background information for 16 Kemp Road West. This plan illustrates the location of the subject lands. The subject lands are located on the north side of Kemp Road West and the west side of Mountain Road. The subject lands are 4.88 hectares in area and contain a single detached dwelling, detached garage, workshop, and the 3 former turkey barns that are currently being used for self-storage. A portion of the property is laid with gravel for access purposes and the outdoor storage of vehicles and trailers. Documents that must be considered by the town in its review of the proposed applications include Town of Grimsby Official Plan, Kemp and Mountain Road Hamlet Secondary Plan, and the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw. The subject lands is designated Hamlet Residential Area in Official Plan. The permitted uses shall include single detached dwellings, local convenience service retail, small-scale industrial or industrial commercial uses which serve the needs of the agriculture area. The subject lands also lie within Kemp and Mountain Road Hamlet Secondary Plan, which is a special policy area of the Grimsby Official Plan. The main permitted uses include single detached dwellings, small-scale commercial or industrial commercial uses, including farm implement dealers, convenience stores, gas stations, and retail shops, which serve needs of the hamlet residents and the surrounding area and the traveling public. Development criteria include addressing engineering issues. The draft zoning amendment is attached here. The application proposes to exclude automobile service garage, automobile body shop, dry cleaning facility, industrial use, research and laboratory use, transport terminal as permitted in the GE zone on this lot. This preliminary plan shows the proposed zoning category and boundaries. The purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment is to amend the zoning from specialty crop to hamlet residential and general employment to allow for the future severance of a 0.45 hectare lot for future residential purposes on the front portion and the legal operation of an existing self-storage business on the rear portion of the property. The application was circulated to external agencies and internal departments for review and comment. The region offers no objections in principle. There are comments regarding the proposed lot creation will be provided through future consent application. Planning department has some comments. The official plan section 10.10 requires that in order to consider a use on the property on the subject lands, a development plan must be prepared for the use that is being requested. A development plan is only being proposed for the self-storage use. No development plan was submitted for the other proposed uses: ancillary retail, customer workshop, service shop, warehousing, and wholesaling. Based on what the applicants submitted for their first submission, this is the zoning that the planning staff recommended. Please see this zoning schedule for reference. Planning staff's support for the self-storage use will be restricted to within the existing building only. Also, outside storage should be restricted within the zoning amendment to a portion of the lot. Public Works have no objections to the proposed zoning amendment, subject to the submission of a grading plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. Grimsby Power and Grimsby Fire have no objections to the subject application. We also received written comments from the public and a comment from the open house, which was held on February 18th, 2021. The major concerns are the size of the outdoor storage and the privacy issues. The next steps are: first, receive public and updated agency comments. Staff will then do the final analysis, prepare a recommendation report, and submit to council for their decision. If the application is approved, the applicant is required to make the site plan and the severance application. The applicants provide response to the comments that they were received. They are amending their application and have updated their conceptual plan. I'm now passing it on to Mr. Craig Rowe from Upper Canada Consultants to present on the applicant's behalf. Thank you.
Great. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Craig Rowe. I'm a senior planner with Upper Canada Consultants, representing the Caetanos this evening. Nancy, did you want me to share my screen, or okay, you're bringing it up for me? Okay, great, thanks. Great, so we can just skip ahead to the next slide. So I know many members of council attended the open house a few weeks back. It's my intention tonight not to kind of duplicate the things Jessica said. She's given a good overview of where we're at with everything right now, but also just want to touch on some of the changes that we've made in response to the comments from yourselves and from public comments as well. Next slide, please. So as alluded to, this property, when the Kemp and Mountain Road hamlet was established in the town of Grimsby, it never had its zoning updated. So it's still stuck with the specialty crop zoning, which is reflective of properties that are in the Greenbelt area. So the Caetanos have, they've applied for a zoning bylaw amendment on their property to set up for a couple of uses that they would like. The first is to designate the front portion of the property as hamlet residential. That will acknowledge the existing dwelling and allow for a future severance of a new dwelling lot out along Kemp Road. And then the balance of the property in the back would be going to a GE general employment zone. And that's to facilitate the continued use of the turkey barns on site as self-storage, as well as for outdoor storage of materials of a self-storage nature, but just outside the structures. Next slide, please. Great. So this is just an aerial photograph. So in total, our land area is about 4.8 hectares of land here. Like I said, zone specialty crop, and its current use is a mix of commercial and residential. And the only new construction that is proposed would be that new dwelling once it's eventually severed off. Next slide, please. So this is similar to what Jessica showed. This is just a copy of the extents of that zoning. As you can see, hamlet residential out near the road where the existing and proposed dwelling would be, and then the back, that would all be general employment. Next slide. So these are just a couple of images that we took from last year on the property. So this is if you're on Kemp Road facing north. This is the existing house at 16 Kemp Road. Next slide. This would be, if you're staring south, there's a drainage ditch that runs across basically where the back of the proposed residential lot would be. So this is the area that's envisioned to be developed with a new detached dwelling be severed from the property. Next slide. These are the former turkey barns after they've been converted to self-storage use. So you can see they're all independent bays that are accessed interior to the site. And there's that hydro transformer that Grimsby Power has noted we need to do some reconfiguration on. Next slide. And then this is along the western limit of the property, just the backside of the barns with storage units. As you can see, that swale there actually conveys drainage from the rear of the property out towards Kemp Road. Next slide. And then this would be the view from the outdoor storage area. This is facing towards the neighbors that live on Mountain Road, over towards where Mr. Villela, who submitted public comments, over towards where they live. As you can see, it's just kind of fallow field right now. There's nothing out in that area. Next slide. Great. So in terms of public and agency comments, Jessica touched on a bunch. Really, there were no objections to the application. There were some comments from Town of Grimsby planning staff, which was to exclude all the uses except self-storage and agriculture. We've requested that we be allowed to also overtly include outdoor storage. So that would be the parking of vehicles or trailers as currently occurring on site. And also agriculture, in our opinion, isn't viable to put in the very back corner of this property. We have a redesign plan that we feel can help mitigate potential land use impacts, and we're going to utilize that area as a bit of a natural buffer, and put overtly into our zoning bylaw what the town staff requested for. They want us to provide, as part of the zoning, a minimum buffer area that would provide a visual barrier, acts as a sound barrier, vegetation, make sure that the neighbors that are living on Mountain Road aren't negatively affected by what's being proposed. Niagara Region had no concerns, save and except for a record of site condition, because the barns have been used as a commercial use. We need to do a record of site condition and file with the ministry. Public comments were really restricted to privacy and view concerns, and were filed by that one neighbor. Next slide. So really, the responses and changes that we've made, as we've indicated, we want the permitted uses on site will be the hamlet residential up front for the dwelling. On the GE, we have consented and agreed with staff that we can exclude all uses except for self-storage, but we do want a caveat in that explicitly allows for the outdoor vehicle and trailer storage, because it is part of that business that the Caetanos are currently running. Also, in response to land use compatibility impacts and the comments from Mr. Villela, what we provided is a detail on our site plan of a 50-meter landscape buffer that would run along the east and northern side of the property. And in that would include perimeter drainage swale. It'd be a 13.5 meter wide landscape berm. It'd be 2 meters at its tallest point, and would be planted on top as well as in the hill of it as well. And that would provide not only tree plantings, which are aesthetically pleasing, environmental benefit, but would also provide that dust odor visual mitigation from the adjacent properties. So if we skip ahead to the next slide, this is just a close-up of that detail. So as you saw with staff's presentation, their initial thoughts were to limit the outdoor storage area to just where the gravel is. We're proposing using the hatched area as outdoor storage, but tempering that with that large scale buffer that goes around the entirety of the property. We feel that's an appropriate compromise, and it allows them to use the property to its highest and best use. And just if we go to the next slide, we also prepared a cross-section detail of what that berm would look like. So houses on Mountain Road would be on screen right side at the property line, our drainage swale planting up and over, and then would crest down the other side. This sort of slope allows us to cut the grass, maintain the trees, and provide enough height to that buffer to ensure that we're providing that desired visual mitigation. Next slide. So in terms of our project timeline, our submission was made in August, and we got to our open house in February. We're having our public meeting tonight in May, and to follow would be staff report for recommendation and council decision. If council chose to approve the application for zoning, it would allow us to move forward with our consent application for the lot on Kemp Road, and then the balance of the property would be subject to a site plan approval application where we can address all the detailed engineering comments such as drainage, emergency access, hydro, all of those things. Those works would be undertaken, of course, only once there is a guarantee that the use would be permitted. So believe that's our last slide, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that members of council would have this evening.
Thank you for your presentation, Craig. Any questions from council? Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Just some clarity, please, on the staff report. In it, the berm, it refers to it as being 13.5 meters wide with 2 meters tall, and but yet in the site-specific bylaw, it says 15-meter wide buffer. And if that berm will be subject to a site alteration permit, and it looks like from what I heard that it extends around the full north and east of the property. So what are we looking at with respect to amount of fill that would be required to come in for that, if it's known? I just wondered if that would be something that we know at this point. Thank you.
Oh, Walter, you want to answer that? Go ahead, Walter. Saw your hand up.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That would not be subject to the site alteration bylaw because it would be subject to site plan control. So yeah, site plan sites are exempt from the site alteration bylaw. And the amount of fill that's brought in, how it's brought in, how it's graded, how it's finished is all subject to site plan approval. The amount of fill that would be required there, I really couldn't tell you. I haven't done the math to calculate how many cubic meters of fill would have to be brought in to accommodate that. Maybe Mr. Rowe might have that answer, but it's very preliminary at this stage.
Thank you, Walter. Just one follow-up question to that, please, Mayor. So this is going to be rezoned to GE, and I know we had concerns in the area with specialty crop where berms were not permitted. So is it normal that a berm would not be permitted? And this is like an exception that we're putting in because of the situation with the neighbors' concerns? That's to Walter, please.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, it's typically in where you have sensitive land uses like residential land uses next to uses that potentially pose nuisances to the residential sensitive land use, like dust, like noise, like odor, like light spillage, things like that. You want to provide and it's appropriate to provide buffering in between the two uses. There are different ways that buffering can be provided. You can provide a significant distance. You can provide berming. You can provide significant planting. Fencing is an option sometimes, and under certain circumstances. What the applicant is proposing here is a berm. It's quite a substantial berm that would be planted with various trees to provide the visual screening and the potential to catch some of the dust that could potentially migrate from the site to the residential area. So I think that's the intent of this particular berm, but it's very common where you have residential uses, which are sensitive land uses, next to commercial operations.
Thank you. I think it's just, and as you said, this will come up again at site plan, that there will be an opportunity to look at the impacts of the amount of fill coming in and how to best mitigate that with respect to nuisance to the neighbors as well. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Councillor Vane.
Yes, my questions, I have a couple of questions. I guess I'll direct them to Mr. Rowe. So this land is currently zoned specialty crop in the Greenbelt, is that correct?
Through Mr. Chair, this land is currently zoned specialty crop. But as the town created the Kemp and Mountain Road hamlet, it's now a settlement area, and therefore it's not technically in the Greenbelt. It's surrounded by Greenbelt designated lands, but the lands themselves in the hamlet are no longer subject to that plan.
So I guess, well, my personal objection is I don't want to touch specialty crops, to be honest with you. We have, as I've said before, gravel and pavement and stuff like that, they don't produce oxygen. So I'm not quite sure why you would buy a property knowing that it's specialty crop and then expect to come in and change it, because I don't think I can support that. Okay, that's about all I've got to say right now. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, if you mind, if I could just address that comment, if permitted.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry about
To the counselor, the properties themselves, the property is now in the hamlet. There's specific secondary plan policies for the Kemp and Mountain Road hamlet. One of them requires that for the future development of this property, that it is to be rezoned. There's detailed policies. We provided our justification in our submission. So the future intent of the lands was not agriculture. It was to be rezoned to either a residential, commercial, or industrial use, the things that Jessica was speaking to. So while they are on the fringe, they are within the settlement area, and those are the areas that are directed for growth and development within Ontario's communities. So that is the reason why we've submitted the application on these lands as opposed to something outside a settlement area where those uses wouldn't be permitted.
You know, I have to tell a very quick story in regards to that comment. I remember dealing with a gentleman up north one time, and he was an agricultural inspector, and he said he could never understand why people bought land next to a pig farm and then complained about the smell. I personally am opposed to this, and I appreciate what you're saying, but again, we're giving up too much land for things like storage lockers and stuff like that. And I'm very disappointed to hear that you're actually parking vehicles on there, because that just destroys the soil. It's going to make the soil contaminated. And so I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Just a question. I have two questions. First question is with regards to the agencies that commented. Was the Niagara Conservation Authority, would they have had any reason, or could they be allowed to comment on that? Because I know they had a lot of comment and input when we okayed the hamlet a number of years ago. So that's my first question. If I could get an answer to that, then I'll have another question. Thank you.
Walter?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, the Conservation Authority was circulated, as they are with every application we receive. That's, actually in this case, I don't believe there are any areas that are within their planning jurisdiction. So they don't have any comments regarding this particular site. There aren't any regulated areas that are within a certain distance of the site.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Walter. No, I was just, as you were reading through the agencies that comment, I was looking for that one, even if they were going to say they had no comment. But okay, that's fine. I'm glad to hear that then. The other question I have, if this is approved and with a berm to go around the easterly, northerly part of the property, could there possibly be an alternate route for the fill trucks to come in? Is there a possibility of that? Because I'm a little concerned that the property is it's a very short distance from the corner of Mountain and Kemp Road West. And that corner has been destroyed in the past with all the trucks that were hauling down Kemp Road West. So is there a possibility there could be an alternate route, maybe off Mountain? Is there any property that could be, I'm just thinking about preserving or causing as less damage to Kemp Road as possible. Just my comments to that. Thank you.
Who's going to take that question? Walter?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, it's not something that we're looking at right now. It's something that we would consider when we're reviewing a site plan application if this is approved. We would have the opportunity and the possibility to look at truck routes through the site plan agreement on how to bring fill into the site. But I can't tell you which. There aren't really a lot of options. Either you come from Mountain Street or you come from Wolverton Road.
Yeah.
You're either coming from below the escarpment or you're coming from Mud Street. So there aren't really a lot of options in this particular area.
Yeah, thank you, Walter. And I'm just concerned about the possible potential damage to Kemp Road. It's I know they just it's been this tar and chip. I think it was last year, and they did a really good job of it. And the hot weather, tar and chip doesn't hold up well to heavy trucks. So, anyways, I look forward to if it's approved, your recommendations from staff. Thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Rowe. And basically, I can tell you my biggest concern here is the berm and bringing in fill. So one, I'd like to know, is there an alternative to a berm that could be proposed? That's question number one.
Certainly, through Mr. Chair, we just proposed a berm based on staff's comments asking for a landscape buffer. Typically, that's the easiest to provide. We started out with just roughly saying 2 meters, everything still being subject to site plan approval. I think the one thing that we're trying to propose through our amended application is to say that 15 meters of grass and landscaped area between the property line and the use provides necessary mitigation. Now, the height of that berm, complemented with tree plantings and all of that, that can certainly be worked out with the town and what is considered the most appropriate. It was considered a bit more effective than a large-scale woodboard fence along the entirety of the property, notwithstanding the cost of materials right now, but also the fact that there is a significant amount of wind that comes out of the agricultural area, and that fence probably wouldn't last too long out there. We also need to do some on-site drainage improvements, which will be required through site plan approval. So I think there might be an opportunity to use some of our on-site material to construct a berm, but we're flexible on the design, and whatever staff would agree with us is the most appropriate manner of providing that mitigation. But just as a first response to staff, we thought we'll propose this kind of standard berm detail that we've done on other commercial industrial size properties and see what the takeaway is there. But certainly understand the concern about bringing fill into the site and the amount of construction traffic, but we're a long ways away from the site plan process right now.
Okay, and I don't know if the process allows us to, like, do we approve this site plan, Walter, or does that just strictly planning?
Yeah, this is a site plan that we would be bringing to council for approval.
Okay, so I guess what where I'd have a concern is I wouldn't want to give this plan approval and then sink it when the site plan comes forward, because I'd have a hard time approving the berm and bringing in fill. So, particularly given the size of the berm that you've talked about, I can only imagine how many truckloads, which is something we've been trying to avoid. So, the plan in principle I'm fine with, but the berm I'm not fine with, and there's no point giving you a go ahead on one just to squash you on the other. So that's just my thinking at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Vane.
No, sorry, I left my hand up by accident. Thank you.
No problem. I don't see any further questions. So thank you very much for your presentation, Craig, and your insightful comments, Walter. We just need a mover and seconder to receive report PA 21-22. Moved by Counselor Frake. Seconder, Counselor Cadwell. Moved by Counselor Frake, second by Counselor Cadwell. Resolved that report PA 21-22 be received as information. Recorded vote.
Counselor Bothwell?
Yeah.
Counselor Vardy?
Yes.
Counselor Cadwell?
Yes.
Counselor Dunstall?
Yes.
Counselor Vane?
Yes, for information, yes.
Counselor Frake?
Yes.
Counselor Ritchie?
Yes.
Counselor Sharp?
Yes.
Mayor Jordan?
Yes.
That's carried.
All right, that brings the public meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll be back at 7 o'clock for our special council meeting. See you in 22 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.